Hello, everyone. We are the team Honeypot. Our team members are Jacob, Bo, and Chris. Let's start our presentation by introducing what Honeypot is. Honeypot is a decoy system designed to attract cybercriminals and study their attack methods without risking real world assets. And the purpose of it is to divert attackers from real assets and gather intelligence on their TTPs. So in our presentation, we'll demonstrate how we set up the necessary tools to conduct a honeypot. And we'll also show how the honeypot capture the traffic from malicious sources. So before we jump into the process, I want to let you guys know that we already have the EC2 instance tuned, and now it is ready to be connected using SSH.
Now SSH into the instance that we just created. And we use SSHI to use the private key at the location that you saved. We're going to use Ubuntu as since it's the default username for our instance. And then we're going to go ahead and plug in the private IP that for it. And so I'm going to use that. We say yes. And now we are signed into it. This is my VPN IP. Okay. Now that we are now officially signed in, we can start to configure it. So I'll start by kind of explaining a little bit of what the build does. So here we elevate to sudo if we are not already sudo. This makes it so it's a non-interactive session. So like things like, to ask you to press yes or whatever, you don't have to do that as much. Next, this is to some housekeeping and to make a swap. So we're going to update, upgrade, so pretty much clean repositories that we don't need anymore, or tools, old tools, and then make some swap file so that we can manage resources a little better. Next, we're actually going to be downloading Docker. It's the most straight from the repository, since there's sometimes issues with using app to install it. And then this we might have to run afterwards as well, but this is meant to create to enable Docker and to add our user as into the Docker group. Next, we'll be downloading the AWS CLI straight from AWS and installing it. And then after that, we'll be doing the same for the CloudWatch agents and helpers, where we'll be, installing it straight from downloading it straight from AWS as a deb file, and then going ahead and installing it. And then this is checks if we're sudo once again, just to make sure that our permissions are still what we need them to be. Next, we're going to create the calorie stack, which is if we will explain, we would have explained this already, but this is our honeypot we'll be creating from our Docker hosted honeypot. So we're going to we're going to make this field as a variable. We're going to make a file, these two folders, calorie etsy and calorie var, and make the subdirectories, the log and lib directories. We're going to change the permissions for them for the calorie var, because this is a requirement to get the logs from within the Docker containers and then ship them up via CloudWatch to AWS. We'll show that a little bit later. This is a CFG file to do things like create, to make the honeypot more believable for attackers. So we could, if we wanted to, create user files, files that can exfiltrate and pretend that this is a real victim machine. But since we don't really have resources or the time for all that. We're kind of giving it the bare minimum. Next, we're gonna make the YAML file, which where we'll pull the calorie image, the latest version, restart unless stopped. Here is where we point out the forwarding. So this here is going to be port 22 available to the internet, and then that's going to ship everything to port 2222 to our VM. So this is Docker, and then this is me sending it to the VM. Same thing for the telnet on 23, available to the internet, and then ship all the logs. And this is so when we see the logs, it'll show us, it won't show port 22, it'll actually show port 22223 or whatever in the logs. But we have to keep in our minds if the attacker would have seen this. Moving along, this shows where we've installed certain directories to tell. It's more like a config setting where we will be showing Calorie where to put and place things, etc. And this is setting up the environment with telnet enabled. Output is JSON. The log size is 50 megabytes, and download limit is 10. Right. And some of this, okay, so next we'll be, restarting SSH. Some of these things we'll have to do afterwards anyway, just to make sure they're done correctly. This is just a hopes to kind of do them in an automated fashion. Next, we make a system file for our calorie stack so that every time we restart the machine, we don't have to turn on and off the calorie like Docker stack. This will just do it by automatically. Like for instance, this will do on start Docker compose up D, and then on stop Docker compose down. And then so we will have to run the system daemon reload and system enable, system CTL enable now, calorie stack. It's the name of the process that we've created. And then here are some kind of SSH hardening that we will do afterwards anyway, just to make sure it's done correctly. But this you don't have to worry about too much, since we'll be doing it manually. So let's go ahead, go back into our SSH session.
Okay, so now going back into our SSH session, what we're going to do is we're going to log back in, and we're going to actually update our SSH conf file. And the reason for this is because we actually want to keep a management port for ourselves. And so now we'll go in and we'll update that to port 52s instead of just a standard 22. And we'll reload the box so those can actually take effect. Next, we'll go back to the console and we're going to actually want to update the security group. The reason for this is because we want to actually leverage the honeypot on port 22 and 23, like we said already. And so we'll actually create a rule for that, and that'll just be open to anyone accessing it so we can actually track those and attract them into connected to the box. And then we'll also add in a management for ourselves. And we'll actually lock this one down to just my IP, and that'll make sure that the management of the actual box itself is not open to everyone. Next, we'll actually try logging in again so we can actually see if the ports are actually functioning for me, and we can see that it is, which is awesome. And we'll actually just also take again look at the SSH conf file just to make sure that it's actually updated, which it should be because we were able to log in and we can see it, and that is good. So that is good for the management now. Next, what we're going to do is we're actually going to want to compose the Docker service. And so the first thing we're going to have to do is change directories. And once we actually change directories to where we can actually compose it from, we can actually run the commands. And it's always good practice once you actually compose it to restart your services, just to make sure you're not hanging on to certain ports that should be using. So we'll get that restarted. And then once you actually compose it and you restart your services, you should be able to check your Docker PS and see what it's actually using. And once we get this restarted, we should be able to see the services come online here. And now we can actually see it. So that's good. We see 22 and 23. Now that we have it running on the server, what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually want to start setting up the environment to forward logs from the local server to CloudWatch, which is a service in AWS for log consumption. So the first thing is you're going to want to go to IAM. That's the service that can actually be deployed, and you actually want to create it. You're going to need to associate it to your box that you're going to be consuming it from, and you're going to want to give it the appropriate permissions. CloudWatch service is what we're looking for here. And once you have that done, you're going to want to also give it a friendly name. Just makes it easy to kind of find once you start getting into CloudWatch and looking at the different streaming telemetries that you have. Next, we're going to actually want to tie that new service to our box. So we'll actually go back to our VM and we will go to security settings and we will actually modify IAM role. And this is where the friendly name comes in handy and we can find it pretty easily and we'll add it in. Next, we're going to update the server and we're going to want to install the CloudWatch agent. Once we actually have this installed, there are some things that we're going to want to update. Purposes being, we want to update the instance ID dynamically from the server itself that's forwarding from, and timestamp, just better formatting for it. And so this is pretty easy to update. You just do the JSON file. And then we can actually do a cat just to kind of monitor it. I always like doing that just to make sure that what I actually pasted is what I expect. And we can see the parameters in there. And now it's time to start the agent, and that should actually start running it. Now that we got that all prepped, we can actually go back to the console, and here we can actually look up the CloudWatch service, and everything should be ready for us. So as soon as we go in, there's a couple places you have to click through. Is log groups is the first one you actually want to look at, and once you get in there, you'll actually see some of the dynamic names that we threw into the JSON file. So Kari logs for the specific Docker that we're going to be forwarding from, and then also on the bottom, once you go in there, you'll actually be able to see the instance ID that is dynamically filled out from the JSON file that we put in. So, and from here, I'll actually give it back to Jacob, and he's actually going to simulate in a scan from someone on the internet against our honeypot.
Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and run a quick nmap scan against the honeypot. There we go. And so we're gonna do just real quick, make it fast, and make sure that we don't get blocked. And also, we're gonna do a verbose because we want to see what's going on here. All right, so it says it's an EC2. We already knew this. So there's that. Next, we're going to go ahead and do this. Actually, let me move that.
And looking back now at the logs, we can actually see a bunch of logs show up, which is good because now we know that the box was receiving connections. Those logs were successfully forwarding to our CloudWatch service, and we can actually query off these and create alerting. So when you think about it, it's really useful. And you can see a bunch of examples here, but it's good for if you want to get alerting on this and you want to just know if someone's attacking your box or sniffing through it. This is a great way to can do that. And logs itself is it's hard to read, right? Of course, but what you can actually do also is you can actually create queries with the CloudWatch service and visualize them. So here's a kind of like a snippet of that where you can actually say, hey, I want to, unique names that have been connected to my box. I want to see a number of those, an aggregate number, and you can see here where we actually demo that with a bunch of different a dictionary that was being used in the attack to try to connect to the box, which is really useful. It's great. And I think that that's really it. As we discussed in this presentation, we went through how the cloud infrastructure can be used, AWS specifically as our cloud service provider. We actually stood up a box, and from that box, we were actually able to deploy a container, Docker container, for a Honeypot service that can sit and just kind of wait there for folks to try to connect to, and we can actually get that telemetry. A good use case for this could be potentially maybe you want to deploy something and you want to see if there's somebody internally or externally scanning the network. And this is just Honeypot's just a really good, attractive way to kind of capture that traffic and see who's doing what. But I want to say thank you to everyone for spending time with me and learning this. Jacob and Bo, super thank you, and for everyone's attention here. Thank you. Have a good day.